Okay, and thanks everybody for joining. This is the Accelatis Essentials series of webinars. My name is Chuck, and today we're going to be going over the repository module. I want to start by letting you know that the Essentials series is a 15-minute long session which focuses on a very specific area. We don't do a Q&A at the end of it, and again, the idea is just to keep it down to 15 minutes so that everybody's as condensed as possible, quick in, quick out. So if you have any questions afterwards, I'll put up email addresses, and you can always send us questions, and we'd be happy to answer them. So the repository module in the Accelatis Center of Excellence, it really is a graphical representation of the files that are in the Accelatis system. In Accelatis, everything is kept in the database. We keep a number of tables in the database, one in particular called files, where we keep a whole bunch of stuff, and instead of having to go in and write queries against the database, we have this repository module, which allows you as a user to open up the UI on the front end, and you can get access to anything that's inside of there. As far as using the repository, you can use it to retrieve old reports. You can use it to store files off of the network. I'll explain that a little bit later. You can share files between Accelatis users, so it's an area where you can put files up and retrieve them. And you can also compare files. So out of the box, we can keep we keep SOX outlines there, we keep product extracts there, rules files, whatever you put in there, you can do a compare, and I'll show you that functionality as well because it's one of those things that most folks don't know about, but really could be helpful. Canned reports are always stored in the repository. So whether you're running a report from an automation, if it's scheduled, if you're running it ad hoc and just right-clicking on it, we always keep a copy of that report in an XML format in the repository. So it sits in there, and if you ever needed to go back and take a look at it or you wanted to retrieve it, you can certainly do that. Again, you don't have to click anything. They're automatically stored there.
Hey, Chuck,
and there are
your screen.
Yes.
I don't see your screen.
You don't see my screen. Thank you, because I wonder if I am, well, okay, I'm sure you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Except we want that screen. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. The first two slides are the same exact ones you saw from weeks ago, so nothing interesting there. But thanks, Lee. So some export types can be saved here. There are things like metadata extracts that you can do in HFM. You could save it to a file on the file system, but there's a checkbox as well where you can save it to the repository. This is where that is saved to. And then again, the file compare feature to help track differences, and I think I went over that, and I'll just get on to the next slide, which basically shows a layout of the repository folders. So there is a parent folder called reports, and again, like I said, for almost every report type task that we have in automation, there is a similar folder in the repository that will keep those reports. Whether you tell it to or not, they just automatically go here, and you can see there's a summary report, compliance report, optimization. Obviously everything that we have in there is also a folder in the repository. And then there's some other folders in the repository. One is called attachments, and that keeps your output for your scripts and things like this in there. There's a folder called extracts, which keeps a whole bunch of stuff depending on what action you've taken. The extracts folder can keep, it'll have copies of your S-base outlines for SOX checks. It'll have extracts for different types of objects, and again, I'll show you all that stuff. But the extracts folder has a bunch of stuff in there, and then there's some folders like custom scripts, which you have the custom script module in Accelatis where you can create all your custom scripts and do your things. Well, those are actually stored in that file table, and because it's stored there, we expose that in the repository, so you can get up to all of your custom scripts here. You can save them, fold them, save them, look at them, and do all kinds of stuff. We keep all of your predefined performance graphs in here, so if you have gone through and created your own performance graphs, you can see those in this folder structure as well. Same thing with dashboards. Activity queries, any queries that you have saved in activity analysis will be saved there. And product artifacts, So we do give you the ability to export artifacts from certain products, and we can keep those in here as well. And then there's user folders, which I skipped over because user folders are the area that you can do all kinds of stuff with. You can create folders for different things. You can make them public. You can make them private. You can upload files to it as far as sharing folders and files. So it's almost like a network shared drive, except you don't really have to do anything. You don't have to contact the IT department. Nobody else can see this except for Accelatis users. So if there's anything that you have that you want to store, you don't really want to keep it on the network, but maybe you want some other people to have access to it. It's an easy place to go, upload, download, and do all kinds of stuff there. And certainly I'll show you all this stuff. So I will give you a demonstration here of the repository module. Let me just pull up my Sandbox environment. So I'm already logged in, and like I said before, this is a 4.0 environment. If you're on 3.5, this will look a little bit different. But just like most of the things that we have covered, the repository module has not changed much as far as how it looks, how to click around, how to get to where you need to go. So this is all the same. In 4.0, you come under Tools, and then you would just click on Repository, and this will open up the repository module. And I'll just walk you through quickly some of the controls on the top of it. So in the top left, you've got a refresh button, and you do need to hit this refresh button every time you're expecting something new. If I were to go out to an automation right now and run it, that file would not show up unless I hit the refresh. It'll go out, it will requery that files table and get all the information that I want. I can add a folder by clicking this button. I can only add a folder under user folders, right? So again, I click the button, I can add it, new folder, and if I leave it default, it's a public folder. So any user that logs into Accelatis can see this. If I deselect that, then only the user that I'm logged in as will be able to see it. So you can have some things that are just for you, some things that are for the whole team. All depends on what you want. But creating folders is as easy as that. And you can see under my user folders that now I have a folder called New Folder. You can use the plus and the minus icon at the top to add or delete files. Okay. As far as adding files, you can add anything you want. It doesn't matter what the extension is. Doesn't matter, you know, the sky's the limit. You can put whatever you want in here. I'm going to show you that under here. I put in a couple of XML files that I'm going to do some stuff with in a second to show you. But I can add, and then if I wanted to remove any files that I added, I simply put a check mark next to the file, and I would click the delete file button. It will say, are you sure you want to delete the files? And if I said yes, then it pulls it right out of there. I can add, or sorry, I could delete files from anywhere. It doesn't have to be under the user folders directory, and I'll give you the example of maybe performance graphs. Okay, so this is a representation of all of the saved graphs that you've done in Performance Lab, where maybe you've got some reports running or some dashboards that are showing these particular graphs. I can actually come in here and I can delete them. So if I had a number of graphs that I didn't want, no longer am using, whatever the cause, I can come in and actually pull them out of here and delete them, and it'll pull it out of the system for me. So just be aware that that delete files, you can delete a whole bunch of stuff. Save file locally. Now, this is where I would go if I wanted to save something. I've got this list of, say, custom scripts, and let's say I want to go ahead and take a look at this custom script. Now, there's a couple of ways I can do it. I can certainly go into my Manage Custom Scripts and see it, or I can come here and I could save this custom script, and I'll go ahead and save it to the desktop. All right, so once I save it to the desktop, if I look, I now have the script that was in Accelatis, and now it's a flat file on my operating system. I can go in and edit it and do whatever I want to do. But again, with that button, I could take any file that's in the repository and I could save it to any location on my disk. The next thing is compare files, and this one is really useful. Again, in this case, I've got a couple of files here, server 1 XML, server 2 XML, whatever they've got in there. But if I wanted to compare these two things, I would simply put a check mark next to both of them and then click the compare files icon. And what it does is it brings up our comparison tool, and I can quickly go in and see what's going on here as far as differences in the two files. I can scroll up and down and I can see that this red indicates that there is something in this file that's not in this file. Same thing with the green on the other side. But if I click on it, you could see down here that it gives me a side-by-side comparison and it highlights the differences. So here you could see everything is fine up until we reach EPM system. So top one is a 1 to 2. Maybe fairly easy to see this kind of change in some files. But when you're talking like S-base outlines or calc scripts, you may have a couple different versions that you want to compare, and it's a quick way to do it. Now, I did this compare on these files that are inside of my user folders. But if I go to something like extracts, where I've got my outlines and my calc scripts, it gets a little more difficult to go side by side and say, geez, I wonder what the difference is between these two files or between whatever. So again, you would just simply come in here, a couple of check marks, although these are going to be wildly different. Again, just know that this functionality is here, very useful. And then the last one at the top here is a file filter. I am sure that when you look at your Accelatis environment, you're going to have much more line items than I have, because for me it's just my Sandbox environment. But you do have the ability to come down and filter based on file type. So if I know I'm looking for, let's say, my load library, which the load library exists here in this folder, and I've got 700 files, I could just pull this down and it will go ahead and filter based on the extension. And if I wanted to, I could take my load library and again go through this whole process, save it on my desktop. And this load library is the actual load library that's in the database. You can take it now that it's on the file system, and you can manipulate it however you want to, however you want to do it. So that's the controls up on the top there. And I wanted to walk through as well, before I went too far, some of the folders and what you'll find in there. So the reports that we keep, as I mentioned before, we've got a number of things that are in here. Be nice if I did that. Let's take SOX audit, for example. It keeps an XML version of all of your reports, and if you wanted to see one, you'd simply double-click on it, and it's going to ask me if I want to open it. I'm going to say yes, and the next thing it's going to do is ask me for a format. I can view it in any format, and this is because I have Crystal reports loaded where I'm running my client. So depending on what I pick, I just say OK, and from my client now I get a pop-up, and this is my beautiful SOX audit report, which doesn't have much stuff in it. But the idea is that I have a running history of any report that I've run here. So I can go back in time, and some of these you can see go back a little bit. Let me see how far I go back. No, not that far. All right, well, I'm not going to be able to show you too much in the way of content, but understand that all of your stuff is saved here. If I go back here, maybe I've got some stuff here. You go from January, but anyways, you can come in here and anything that's stored as XML will give you the ability to change it into something that Crystal reads, PDF, Excel, HTML, or anything like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to show you. Again, depending on where you're clicking, this should be pretty self-explanatory as far as what you're seeing. And again, you can keep this for as long as you need and use it for whatever. Okay, the last thing I want to show you before we close out is going to be back here. The quick tip would be in order to control how long you keep the reports live for in the files table, you would use the purge files task, which is an automation, and you'd find it under Accelatis. And when you open up the properties, you could see all of our reports directories here. And you could just tell it how long you want to keep it for, purge files older than X number of days. And once you run that job, you can prune it. Could be 90 days, could be 180, whatever you want. But again, that's sort of how you would go, and you would keep tabs on the reports and figure out how long you want to keep stuff going for. So that really is the repository module, and I want to bring up the next session. Next week is going to be Accelatis graphs, creating them, and right-click functionality. I think this will be a good session for everybody. And again, like I said before, if you guys have any questions, feedback, anything that you think might make a good 15-minute subject for us to do on the Accelatis Essentials series, please send us an email, let us know your thoughts, and we certainly will work it in to a session. And that's it for today. Thanks everybody for joining.